bring your microphone, pull the microphone closer to you. Yeah, to your mouth. Yeah, that's good. So everyone could hear you loud and clear. Once again, welcome.
Um, Thanks for having me, and good morning to yourself and to your staff and to the viewing and listening public.
Thank you so much indeed. Well, as we discussed before, the format of our conversation this morning, I mean, I know you've had a hectic weeks gone by and you've got another close to 2 weeks coming up. So lots and lots of things in place. But campaign season and candidates will always seek any opportunity to share with electors and, of course, prospective voters, if you want to say that, and undecided as to where they should put their X when it comes to elections day. So what we'll do, I'll give you the privilege of starting with an opening statement. And after that, we could go into some questions. Then we're going to throw open the phone lines. So all yours.
I would say at this stage that one of the most important things we did in the week, in the last week, was on Friday, we launched our manifesto. That manifesto emerged after 3 to 4 years of meeting people in the public domain, engaging them, and working out what kind of plans they need to be. And so what we have done is to produce a manifesto, and based on the engagement with the people of Ghana, they made it very clear that the major focus should be on reducing and eradicating poverty. And so at the center of everything in our manifesto is a set of policies that are aimed at reducing and ultimately eliminating poverty. And that is why you will see us talking about a living income. You will see us speaking about carrying up the threshold to 400,000 so more Guyanese can benefit from tax-free earnings. You will see us talking also about giving to the tertiary education personnel $50,000 a month so that they can help them to go to school. You will see that we have agreed to reduce taxes on the four-door, 4x4 vehicle, which we believe is a good utility vehicle for farmers, for persons generally. And so that reduction will save Guyanese about $10 million, and they will be able to purchase such a vehicle, which can be used for both private as well as business activities. So the whole focus of the people-centered development strategy we're talking about is to put people first, and at the same time put resources in the pockets of the Guyanese people and create conditions propitious to them coming out of poverty. So the focus on eradicating poverty is the key focus of our plans.
Thank you so much indeed. Good opening, good start. But and since you have based most of this putting people first plan as part of the underlining factor in your manifesto and going forward, I saw and I read in the news this morning where President Ali, in as recent as last evening in Lethem, I don't know if this was done after your manifesto was put out, but I'm seeing here where he says they're going to increase the cash grant from 50,000 to 100,000. And then he says there's going to be an increase in old age pension to 60,000. How do you counter that in terms of what you plan to do in those areas?
We have already counted that. If you look at our flags, you will see on it that we will increase old age pension to $100,000. So Ali coming to say he's going to give $60,000 wouldn't cut it at all. The question is not so much the figure that Ali would have given. The question is, what is a livable income for people who have served this country? And clearly $60,000 cannot do it. When you look at what is happening to our pensioners, a minimum of 100,000 is needed. And because we are going to do electricity subsidy, 10,000, and water subsidy, 5,000, there are more benefits to be had by the pensioners in this country. So if an Ali has been following virtually everything we would have said, but by the very nature of their approach, they cannot give 100,000. They need to keep money for corrupt activities. We need to focus on the people and give them a quality life and let them improve their lives. So we have two different focuses.
As we go on, oil and gas That's very significant in the minds of Guyanese and even persons around the world who watch Guyana emerge into this developing economy. What are your thoughts on the oil and gas sector?
Well, we have to look at the oil and gas sector from a number of levels. First, the governance of the oil and gas sector, and secondly, the benefits to be derived from it. The governance of the oil and gas sector is in deep trouble. The government made the fundamental mistake of changing the laws we had put in place so that they can take 99% of the money out of the Natural Resource Fund. That defeats the very purpose of the Natural Resource Fund. The Natural Resource Fund was intended to be a fund that helps us to save for future generation, but then it should have been guided by certain key principles. Among them, you should have been stating to the public specifically what you're taking the money for, and it should be focused on investment rather than just consumption for the sake of consumption. So the first thing we will do is to change the rules of the Natural Resource Fund and put it back to a point where part of the resources from oil and gas will be saved and invested, and part will be utilized. We do not believe that you can go down the road of the PPP government of utilizing all of the money from the oil and gas sector into budget support. What happens when the price of oil goes down? You're in deep trouble. We intend to create a situation where we utilize the resources from oil and gas, but at the same time we have saving and cater for bad days. The other point about it is the engagement of Exxon. I've made it very clear that Article 24.1 of the um, agreement offers the opportunity for us to engage Exxon and to seek to have more benefits accrued to the Guyanese people. For me, it is important to have more benefits accrued to the Guyanese people. We will engage, we have already begun to engage experts in the area so that we'll produce a good negotiating team that can negotiate and bring benefits to bear for the people of Ghana. So I think that dealing with the oil and gas sector is critical. We also stated that we'll establish a professional petroleum commission, a petroleum commission that is comprised of professional, competent people that can oversee the oil and gas sector rather than making it a pawn of politics. At present, what happens is the government, at its own whims and fancies, do all kinds of things with the oil sector rather than having a structural development approach to oil and gas in Guyana. And a manifestation of it is the inability of them to complete the gas to shore project. If you consider this project to be so important and that you had averred view that it's going to bring down the cost of electricity by 50%, then you should have known that if it doesn't meet the timeline, almost automatically, every day that it extends, the cost will go up, and that will end up being paid by the consumers of electricity and taxpayers. So the government, by its incompetence, would have already removed the possibility of us having the electricity bill by their inability to competently manage the construction of the oil and gas project.
You know, talking about governance, and since you alluded to that, let me move on to my next question, which obvious talks about governance. And as part of your manifesto, one of the light items is about good governance. Where do you see, or where do you factor in good governance according to on Aubrey Norton administration?
I think one has to understand what is governance. I think people mix up governance with government. Governance is how you govern. You can govern badly, as this government is doing, or you could govern in a proper way. We want to focus on good governance. We want to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. Those are two critical factors. There must be equity. In other words, as we allocate and distribute resources, those who have less should get more, and those who have more should get less. And that is also part of our plan to reduce the gap between rich and poor. We have said that we will increase wages and salaries to a minimum of 200,000 or 35% on a graded basis. All of those are aimed at putting money in the people's pocket, but at the same time ensuring that those who need more get more and those who have a lot get less.
There's a lot being spoken about uh, foreign relations, and this is an area where you have had some expertise. You worked in that department. Where do you think our foreign relations stand, and how much could it be improved?
Well, the thing I would say is this: the government doesn't understand foreign policy, or if it does, it is reckless. Foreign policy demands a structured approach. In the first place, you have to have a foreign ministry that is based on competence. You need a foreign minister that is extremely competent and can develop relations with countries based on fact and knowledge. One of my criticism of the foreign ministry is that the minister seems out of touch with reality. So our first task will be to ensure we employ the best and the brightest in the foreign ministry, because you are seeking to have people who will represent your country. You have to also clearly define what are your foreign policy objectives. At the front of Ghana's foreign policy must be the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy. I have implored on Prime President Ifanari on many occasions the need to do a number of things which he failed to do. One is to have a public relations campaign at the international level. When you speak to people in Latin American countries, they support Venezuela, some of them, out of lack of knowledge. And therefore, it is incumbent on the government to ensure that it puts the information out there. I recommended to him that they take out full page ads in papers in Latin America. He failed to do that. And so you have a support deficit. Then you have Africa, 54 countries. I met the vice president of Nigeria, and when I was talking to him about the Ghana Venezuela territorial controversy, he knew nothing, because our government has failed to engage governments and let them have the knowledge of what is happening so that we can have the solidarity and support that is needed. Then we have to, in the area of foreign policy, look at the new areas of that are emerging. Water is becoming a critical um, issue in the world. Yet this government has done nothing as the land of many waters to develop a foreign policy that allows us to advertise our water potential and probably develop an industry from it. It is something that should be considered. Your foreign policy must promote your economic development. And we're not seeing a foreign policy that is promoting our economic development. At the basis of our foreign policy action will be economic development. We intend to have a strong ministry of international trade, of trade locally and international trade, because we believe it is critical to our economy and to our foreign policy. So we are looking at a complete overhaul of the foreign policy sector in Ghana, beginning with putting the people that are competent and that can do the job. Foreign policy has the tendency to be very nuanced. And if something is as nuanced as foreign policy, then you have to have an intellectual core that could understand the nuances and develop an approach that allows us to understand the other societies in the world and at the same time advocate our interests. Because basically, foreign policy is the promotion of a country's interests, cognizant of the interests of others, so you can arrive at a confluence of positions.
All right, let's shift a little bit now. I asked Mr. Hughes a question last week when he was here, and I'll ask you the same question. It has to do with our political path. Teddy Jagan and Forbes Burnham, despite being political adversaries, found ways to meet and agree on critical issues. They used the term critical support. Today's political leaders seem unable to duplicate such an arrangement. How would your party in parliament pursue critical issues with your political adversaries?
When one looks at Dr. Jagan and Forbes Burnham, they had something in common. They believed that Ghana was important. They were what I consider to be national leaders focused on the national interests. Secondly, they had ideological compatibility. They had differences, but they all believe in a kind of a people-centered ideological position. The problem with this government is that it's an oppressive government. It lacks a commitment to any ideology. I call them transactionalists who only look after the transactions that will help them to achieve their private wealth. That makes it very difficult to engage. But I would say this to you: we will engage them, but the significant thing we will do is we will put it in the public domain so that when they try to go down the road of eking out economic things for themselves, the public will see that there are two approaches, one in which we put the people first and another one in which people want to get rich. And I'm dead sure that at the end of that process, it will put pressure to the government to engage and ensure that we can work together.
Continuing along the line, if we touch on social justice, police reform is rated by citizens as a priority issue for the next government and demands growth for professional investigations into the claims of extrajudicial killings, rampant corruption in society, and so on. What would be APNU government's approach to dealing with the issue of the distrust that the population currently has in the police department?
The first task really is to change the leadership of the police force. Again, the transactionalism comes in. The leadership of the police force is serving the elites of this country when they should be seeking to serve the people, protect them, and ensure there is law and order. If you have a situation where senior policemen are being sanctioned for drugs, you are really saying that the very fabric of the Ghana police force is compromised. We will reform the Ghana police force. We will put a professional leadership there, and we will give them the independence that they should have while giving them the general policy guidance to ensure that what they do serves the people and that it is in keeping with the rule of law. But the question is much deeper than that. The question is the kind of person this society is producing. The 28 years of PPP in government basically destroyed the education system. You have a situation where about 16,000 children will do the grade 6 or the common entrance exam, and only about 5 or 6,000 of them will get what is required to go to a secondary school of consequence. Now, when one looks at that, you're talking about 10,000 children or more that aren't going through the system and matriculating. If you don't rectify that, the persons that the police get are the persons that come from the education system. And that is why we say we are going to reform the education system. We're going to pay teachers well so that they are committed, but we also know that we have to reduce the size of the classes. Teachers are teaching too large classes. Then there is the additional problem, the problem of the social problems that come with the society. When we started this approach to teaching years ago in the colonial era and in the post-colonial era, what you had was teachers being trained to teach, policemen being trained to enforce the law. Now there's a whole plethora of social problems that you have to deal with. So in both the police force and the education system, we will have to deploy psychologists, sociologists, social workers to work with them. We mightn't be able to give it to every school, but we can do clusters and ensure that the system has at its disposal professional people that can help our children. We have children that come in contact with the law. And a lot of times the police force help to transform them into coming in conflict with the law. Young people will always come in contact with the law, but we have to have a studied approach to ensure that they don't become in conflict with the law. And we believe that professionals can help in that regard. And so we will take a total approach to the issue. The issue cannot be handled by one ministry. That is why we say we use an all-government approach. We will look at the sectors, see the areas that impact, and then bring together interagency bodies to deal with them so that we can solve the problems at the various levels of the society, the individual level, the institutional level, and the government level at the level of governance. And this is inclusive of the local government structure.
As we're on the trajectory of governance and especially the police service and all of that, and as part of your manifesto, it's the reforming of the public service in general. How do you plan to, if there are plans, to reform and restructure the public service in Guyana?
We have to. The public service is critical to the country. Sometimes people forget that what government does is formulate policies, but it is the public service that transform them into plans and implement them. And so for us, it is very critical that we reform the public service. Just like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will have to train young people for the public service. I thought David Granger made a very important step when he opened the public service training college, which unfortunately the government closed down. This government doesn't have a likeness for people with competence. They like people who are compromised so that they can utilize them for their nefarious purposes. But we will take a different approach. We are going to train public servants at every level. We will have to instill in public servants this idea that their purpose is to serve, and their purpose is to serve within the confines of the law. We are well aware that we have to decrease corruption significantly, because one of the problems in the public service is that because the leadership of the country is corrupt, it trickles down into the public service. And that is why I have said that there needs to be integrity in the persons who we identify as leaders in the society. If you cannot be somebody of integrity, then almost immediately you will be compromised. And that is why we also said we will tighten the rules around the uh, what you call it, the integrity commission, and ensure that it can do its work. And its information must be utilized in an effective and efficient way to reduce corruption. The public service needs to have the kind of competence, and public servants need a moral compass. That is a much harder job to undertake, having lived 28 years of PPPs, corruption, incompetence, and indecency. And that is why we say one of the things we want to do is to return honesty to government. Because unless you can get those values in the system, we're in deep trouble. And we undertake to return honesty to the public service, return professionalism to the public service, return competence to the public service. In this regard, we have already said we will incentivize public servants. We'll give them a salary that they can live on. And we have also said that we find the approach to duty free to be very elitist. You have to be in a certain category or have links with the minister. We're saying that we want a more open system where, yes, those at the top are entitled to it, but we will put either every 3 years or every 5 years, a common public servant will be able to access duty free. When you exclude the average public servant from the duty free, you are really and truly ensuring that they don't live the life that they should live. So our reforms will include changing the rules to ensure that the average public servant, what is wrong with our office assistant being able to purchase a vehicle? Absolutely nothing, except we see it, the society tends to see it as a preserve of the elite. No, we don't believe so. We believe that all public servants over a period of time must be able to access, including teachers, ordinary policemen, etc. If a policeman has to buy a car and the price is prohibitive outside of the confines of his salary, it follows axiomatically that they will end up in corruption. So see our reform of the public service also as being anti-corruption measures to ensure we have an efficient and effective public service.
Just before we open up for questioning the lines, another issue on the burner significantly has been municipalities and how government respond to the needs of municipality, especially our capital city, Georgetown, which seems to have been neglected over the years. What will an APNU government do in terms of whether it's restructuring the Ministry of Local Government or, in fact, ensuring that the councils, meaning the Georgetown City Council and others, council towns around the country, get their fair share of being able to create the kind of environment for its citizens?
One of the things I agreed with President David Granger with was when he changed the name from local government to communities, ministry communities. Local government is intended to build strong communities, and there the focus should be on communities and community development. The things we will do different are a number of things. One, we acknowledge that there is something called devolution of power, decentralization of power. And the local government system is intended to put power in the hands of the communities. We will therefore change the present PPP approach in which they have to control and dominate local government. When you do that, you deprive them of the ability to take initiatives. We intend to have local government that is active and dynamic. When the local government system was established, there is an article in the Constitution, I don't remember it by number, but that article says clearly that these institutions are empowered to make decisions for the area they govern. We want to implement that fully so that communities can do that. Look, let us recall, in an attempt to do that, Hamilton Green, as mayor, recommended to the government that they have a lotto. They refused the Georgetown City Councilate, but then they proceeded to implement it as if it is their own. And now lotto money doesn't benefit uh, local government. We want to give them that authority. We want to see them being able to use the resources in their areas. The law provides for a regional democratic council to utilize the resources in its area to ensure that there are proper projects that can contribute to the development of the communities. We have said that our plan is based on sustainable communities, and that is economic, political, and socio-cultural. So you can expect I don't think there's need for change in the structure. There is need for change in the governance approach. There is need for political will. There is need for you to government to be able to accept that they cannot know the details of, say, Kaikumbe in the Rupunoni, and therefore the people there should inform the decision and have the power to make the decision. And the government has an oversight, but not a ultra involvement to the point where you stop the democratic process. Local government is about decentralizing, devolving power, and ensure that there is involvement of the citizenry in making decisions on matters that affect them. We will pursue that objective.
Just about 28 minutes past the hour, we are chatting with Mr. Aubrey Norton, the presidential candidate for the APNU in the upcoming elections. And let me shift a little bit to campaigning itself. And parties have been complaining, that there have been deliberate disruptions and discriminatory treatment when hosting meetings in certain communities. Has this happened in any political campaigning or political meetings with the APNU? Have you experienced that?
I can tell you from practical experience. I was in Region One, where they had their supporters driving through a vehicle and making a set of noise. I mean, I ignored the ignorance. I recognize that the PPP comes from a backward political culture and they can't transcend it. Also, last evening, they were coming back, I think, from horse racing, and they saw a political meeting at Belladrum, and they were just blazing through with their sirens, etc. I was in Dartmouth, and the PPP paying 11-year-old and 12-year-old boys to come out in the night to lash down the flags. In fact, we actually held two of them, and people were annoyed. And I said to them, look, they are victims of a corrupt government. Let them go. Just let us say to them, you're doing it wrong. We found out that we were in the meeting at Dartmouth, and they were from Westbury, which is a PPP stronghold. So they are into all kinds of disruption. Even in the city, with all the flags they have, they are pulling down our flags. One PPP person, I understand, well, a PPP person informed me that inside the party, they were mad that there were these flags with messages on them. And for that, some reason that irritated them, and they got into this thing about pulling down the flags, etc. But I've said flags don't win elections. People do. And every time they do something like that, they are rallying people against them.
All right, it is 31 minutes past the hour, and it's the opportunity now for you to pass your question to Mr. Norton. The number 223-5483. Number of numbers here in the studio. 223-5483. You have a question for Mr. Norton? Give us a call here on 104.1 Light FM. Seem to have our first question. Good morning.
Hi, Bobby.
Please turn down your radio. And for the benefit of listeners, if you're going to call, please turn down your radios or I'll refuse the call. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, Bobby. I want you, you talk about the 57.5 billion dollars. So not know what that money was spent for.
All right. He's listening and he could
And
respond.
the next question is the letter from the ministry, the commerce, the letter with regards to the people who are on this ban list. Does Mr. Norton have a copy of that letter sent to the Attorney General?
All right. Mr. Norton would respond. Thank you.
The answer is no. I do not have a copy. The 57 billion you're talking about is the supplementary provision.
Well, he's gone. He's gone off the line.
Uh, if
But
it is that he's speaking about, the government never clearly defines what they're going to use money for. They have some very vague thing. In fact, we have argued in Parliament, meaning the opposition, that there should be a proper project profile so that when one sees the money against the project, one can actually analyze it and see, one, if the money is going to be well spent, two, if the money is adequate or inadequate, and be able to make informed comments. But they would just say to build a bridge, story finished. They don't have proper project profiles.
all right, let's go to our next caller. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yep.
I would like to ask Mr. Norton. Good morning to you. Good morning, Mr. Norton.
Good morning.
If there's a possibility that his government should be in power, is there that where you have all foreign companies, with the renewal of tax contracts,
Renewal of what?
all the contracts with working
The
Guyana.
contracts.
You cannot,
Thank you.
I don't know what you mean by renewal of contract. The contracts will state the basics, if there is need for renewal. I mean, I think you're probably trying to find out if there's going to be renegotiation of contract. We have made it very clear that we will operate within the confines of the law. We've made it very clear that moving forward, we would seek much better benefits for the people of Guyana. And as it relates to the oil and gas sector and the Exxon issue, we will engage Exxon to ensure that we can make changes that benefit the people of Guyana.
All right. We have another caller on the line. Good morning. Hello?
Hello, good am I on to Mr. Vieira's show?
Yes, good morning. Your question for Mr. Norton? You have a question?
Yeah, my question is, I learned through the media that we have in excess of 130,000 names more on the voters list. This put me into a panic attack. I want to know at this late stage what can be done. I see the other parties talking about this number, but I want to know what he's doing about it. That's my question.
Thank you so much.
Let us go back. From the inception, we have been fighting to get biometrics and a clean voters list. The government refused to. The government has a majority in parliament. They have made changes, etc. And then you had the Chief Justice ruling, which I thought was a wrong ruling that would have affected this country, in which she ruled that you could not take names off of the list, etc. And then she had the come back to say that the laws need to be reformed. It's a kind of a hodgepodge of laws. Now, what you can do at this level, as far as I'm concerned, is to challenge legally certain elements, but you have to prepare to scrutinize these elections, because clearly the list is a padded list. And if you don't scrutinize the election, the rigging plan will be put in place. It's already activated. In fact, in one case, they put a poll in place at a particular residence, and the man is of a particular religion, and the man is saying that meat cannot go on his premises. How could you put a polling station at a place where you know people have got to eat, and that there are people of different religions going there, and the owner will say no meat can go on his premises? Obviously, they're trying to control. And then they suggested that the owner could provide the meals. who in an election atmosphere will allow a person linked to the PPP to provide meals for your opponents? That has to be a Chinese picture without director.
All right, we got our next caller. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Yes. Your
Hi,
question for
Mr.
Mr.
Norton.
Norton.
So there's this major issue with GRA when it comes to the importation of vehicle. Now it's been going on widespread, and clearly it's a vampiric system that basically destroys most people's business and young people like myself who actually want to move up in society. Now we pay extraordinary amounts of money to import vehicles.
Could you move to the question? We're in a time window here, so could you move to the direct question you want for Mr. Norton?
How are you guys going to handle this? How are you guys going to handle these vampiric taxes from GRA that they put on vehicles?
Thank you.
Well, we have begun that process. I just said to you earlier that on the 4x4 pickup, 4-wheel drive pickup, we remove all the taxes. And what we said is that you will pay 15% on the price of the vehicle. The problem, I think, is that there is too much of a discretionary approach. We will move to an approach which says this is what is the value, and therefore you should be able to know from the value of your vehicle and from other indicators what is the actual price or tax you will pay on it. The system allows too many loopholes, and we'll close those loopholes.
All right. Next question from the audience. Good morning. Hello?
Good morning, Bobby.
Yeah.
I want to ask Mr. Norton.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
I want to ask Mr. Norton, the question is that they have disability people and they have old age pensioners, right? If you're a disability person and they're receiving a disability money from their government, when they become a pensioner, they take away that money from them and only give it to pensioners. Which in disability got a different need to old age because a disability person might have to buy things pertaining to his disability, right? So when he become old age, they take away that money and only give it to the old age pension. So I think when a person is old age and there's a disabled person, they should be receiving both of them.
All right. I think we get the gist of the question.
I have no problem with that. In fact, I think people with disabilities need careful attention. We need to create institutions that they can utilize. We need to ensure that buildings, etc., are built in a way that they can access it. I'm of the view that we need to bring public transportation that is prepared for people with disabilities so that we can help people with disabilities. As it relates to the specific question, I do not think it should be taken away, except with some extreme situation which I don't know about. But the assistance that is given for persons with disability is in itself small. And therefore, to me, it is a burden to remove that when you know that the money you're giving for old age pension cannot mind somebody in their old age. So our approach will be, one, to keep the disability benefit and to ensure that persons also benefit from old age pension, which they're entitled to when they become senior citizens.
You know, one of the questions being asked before we go back to the phone lines is about presidential debates here in Guyana. Lots of people have been asking. It's something that has become common, very common in the world. And so here in Guyana, there is still this apprehension for maybe one reason or the other. But are you open to presidential debates?
Well, I actually give a public statement saying that I was prepared to debate President Finale. And if he doesn't think he's competent himself, I can debate Barra Jack Deo. I have no doubt that they are afraid of a debate. You know, in a debate, you can't abuse. You have to come with the facts and deal with the issues raised. And they're not inclined towards a debate. They're inclined towards, I call yard foulism, where you have a critical issue to discuss a policy issue and you abuse out rather than deal with the issue in context and establish whether you have knowledge of it or not.
Excellent indeed. Let's go to the phones. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Martin. Good morning, Bobby.
Morning.
My question is, and this is a troubling question that's been on my mind for years now. If should the APNU get for, would there be any attempt whatsoever to change the constitution to take away this one monopoly system by a one seat one set of people can make decisions for the whole country? Would it be any consideration by your party to change it and at least have the constitution be constructed in such a way that if you want to make major decisions, at least you must have a two-thirds majority in parliament? Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't stipulate two-thirds majority. There are a number of approaches you can use to achieve your objective. Two-thirds can be difficult in a country like Guyana, and you'll end up with gridlock. But you can have other forms of weighted majority. For instance, you can say for the passing of the budget, you need 50% of the government, 50% of the opposition. What that means right away is that there has to be compromise and negotiation. I believe there's need for constitutional reform. I believe there's need to change this winner-take-all system. But I also know there are a lot of challenges, and the present government would not want the changes. Look, we have made changes to our constitution. We put in place an ethnic relations commission, which should be performing 22 functions. The government does not implement the other 21. And so what happens is that you have it in the constitution, but it's not implemented. The point I'm making here is not just constitutional reform that is needed. There is also need for a change in the political culture. If you have a culture of dominance, winner take all, you can make all the changes in the constitution, and the political actors, if they don't accept the need for compromise, if they don't accept the need for consensus, and they continue to pursue domination and control, then constitutional reform wouldn't help. But as a party, the APNU is committed to constitutional reform to ensure that Guyana can progress and develop in a fair way.
8:43, we are chatting with Mr. Aubrey Norton, presidential candidate for the Partnership for National Unity. One of the key things that we've been hearing about, especially over this weekend past, is housing. And the government's plan to build 16 houses a day and to create 30,000 houses in the next 5 years or so. What are the plans by the APNU, provided they get into government, as it relates to housing in total?
Let me say that the government has always promised, and because they are liars, they will always say, like they said, they created 50,000 jobs, but Guyanese isn't feeling it. We have a number of approaches to housing. We said the base of our housing program will be our rent-to-own program, where we will build houses, we put Guyanese in them, and they will pay rent. And when the rent covers the cost of the house will become theirs. We are well aware that that program can work, but it needs to be complemented by other programs. And so we have also said that we will have a mortgage subsidy, where there might be people who want a mortgage but don't have all the resources to ensure they can get a mortgage. Government will subsidize it so that those people could get houses. So apart from our rent to own, there will be subsidized mortgage. We have also said that apart from the rent to own and subsidies on mortgage, we will have subsidies on rent. We are well aware that we're not going to create 40,000 houses in 5 years. Don't let us fool ourselves. But we do believe that we need to bring relief to the people of Guyana. And while we build houses, etc., for them, we also intend to have rental assistance, where people in the low category. I met 2 teachers from the interior at night, and they pleaded with me to ensure that we can get help with rent. And I said to them, our manifesto already had that, and we intend to give rent assistance, because we recognize that a lot of public servants, particularly at the lower level, are faced with high rents, and therefore there is need for assistance. And then we wouldn't abandon the house lot project, but we believe a house lot is not a house. And so we intend to put infrastructure in place. And those who can afford to build a house can get a house lot and build a house. So we will take at least four approaches to solving the housing problem. And for those who believe the rent to own can't succeed, they must just remember South Rheinveld and all of those schemes that were built and people pay back for them and end up owning them. And today people forget that they were a kind of a rent to own scheme, even though it wasn't called that in that time.
Exciting indeed as we continue here on 104.1. We've got another caller on the line. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. May I ask a question?
Sure, go right ahead.
Good morning to you and to the presidential candidate. Can Mr. Norton please address NIS pensioners? Pensioners have not received an increase for over, I think, 4 years. Can he address that matter? Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, the government misused NIS money. What we have to do is to get in there, have a proper actuarial study done, and then work out how is it we are going to increase the pension and other benefits to persons on the NIS. I don't want to, without the facts, say we will do X or we'll do Y. All I can say to you is this. We'll have the actuarial study done. Because we are putting people first, based on the outcome of it, we will do everything to ensure that pensioners can get an increase. We also have got to deal with a number of issues. I see the government attempted to deal with it, but it is dealt with in a ridiculous way. Somebody got 740 contributions, and the number is 750, and then they can only get a one-off payment. I think we have to put some kind of gradation to that. Just a hypothetical example, you contributed 700 and more, or just about 700 and under, there should be something which says you could get pension based on the 700. And 600, you can get pension based on it. It cannot be just the old system of you have to make 750 contribution or you don't get anything. Those people's contribution should be counted and they should be able to benefit.
Excellent response indeed as we continue. Now, another very critical issue, Mr. Norton, which has been on the burner and continues to be on the burner, is the Guyana Power and Light Incorporated. And recently it was announced that the government last year, I think it was, signed an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with a Dominican company to take care of the management of GPL and by extension, the oil and gas project that's happening at Wales. Now, could you give us an overview on your thoughts on what is happening with the GPL, what the APNU government or APNU government will do in terms of restructuring, ensuring that Guyanese blackouts are something of the past, and where we could look forward to consistent electrical supply throughout the national grid?
When you look at the deal, you recognize it's another corrupt deal. Why would you give to a company that have failed in Jamaica, that fail everywhere we go virtually, to run our company with the hope of bringing it to sustainability? That to me doesn't make sense. It smacks of another PPP corrupt deal. Let us go back. When we came to power in 2015, blackouts were the order of the day. The government put a proper board in place and found management. I think he was Jamaican under David Patterson. And they developed a comprehensive plan. That plan had in it increased generation capacity. It had in it improving distribution so that you don't have the problems that come with poor distribution. That plan had in it projections in terms of how much electricity we will use over a period so that you purchase generating capacity. And we were in the process of purchasing. I think some arrived, but some didn't. The government either stopped it or it didn't come. And now the government come with power ships, something that you're not going to own. You're going to pay these people for the rest of your life. That to me reeks of corruption. We are going to take the approach of going back to that plan, adapting it and improving it, and ensuring that we put in place effective management that can manage the power company and take us out of this situation where there are blackouts. And since between 2015 and 2020, we were able to do it and to improve electricity, I am convinced that we can do it as a government. The other thing, our intention is not to restrict GPL to the PPP. All the PPP did is to come back. They put the first failure, then the second failure, because they just want PPP people. We're not going to do that. We want professional people to run something like GPL and ensure that is efficient and effective. David Patterson is not on the APNU list, he's AFC, but I don't see us excluding him from playing a role because he has the knowledge. And so we will take a professional approach to GPL to ensure that the people of Guyana see no more blackouts in this country.
Do you plan on instituting subsidies for like seniors when it comes to electricity,
Yes, we have
water, and so on? I know you mentioned a little bit about it in your
Yeah.
very opening, but for the purpose of electricity and people's concern about consistent electric power supply, do you plan also on dealing with subsidies for?
Yes, we have already said there will be a $10,000 subsidy. Anybody using 10,000 and under wouldn't pay for electricity. Anybody 10,000 and above will pay the difference between the 10,000 and how much they would have consumed. The same is true for water, except that it is 5,000. But we also have got to improve the Utilities Commission to ensure that it's a functioning commission and that people who are wrong deal by GPL can be compensated. Every day that I walk the street, you have a situation where people tell you that, oh, GPL blew up the equipment and they can't get anything. Only last night, I engaged a man who is in business and he wants to buy a
backup system? Or
no,
the transformer?
the transformer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was told that the rule is they have to buy it through GPL and that for him, GPL own is more costly than the one he wants to buy. I think we should have standard rules. You should say this is the standard you need for the transformer, and it could be purchased from anywhere once it meets the standards. Additionally, they say, and I know this for sure, because when I did one of the houses, what happened is we purchased the transformer, and the transformer automatically becomes GPL owned after I think 6 months or something like that. He's facing that. I think we need to look at that system and make changes to it.
You know, we here at Light FM, we're going through our own discussions with the GPL because we suffered a total loss in our backup system through heavy voltage. But I must admit that the GPL have agreed to take a look at our situation, but we had to reinstall a completely brand new backup system to the tune of over $500,000. And many people, I'm sure, are going through the same thing. But hopefully the GPL management have agreed to take a look at our situation and take it from there. Now, as we get closer to the end, one of my pet subjects that I talk about each and every day, it's national monuments. And for example, the Independence Arch, which continues to be neglected. And I will say, what would the APNU government do when it comes to the restoration of our national edifices? For example, the Independence Arch, Durban Park, and other areas where we see development going on in other areas and nothing is being done, especially in the central and southern Georgetown area. What will your government do?
Again, when a government is transactionalist, certain values don't emerge. I would say this to you. We have got to go back to having the singing of patriotic songs in schools. We have got to create in this society a sense of being Guyanese. If you don't have a sense of being Guyanese, if you don't have an understanding of your history, then it is very difficult for you to add importance to things like monuments. I bet sure if you ask government ministers, well, when I finish talking, they might know. How did the Independence Arch emerge? And many of them would not know that it was a gift from Demba and Alcon when we became independent. And it was
Yeah, go ahead.
it was intended to highlight independence and therefore should be treated as a monument. The same is true about 1763. We have got to find ways and means of teaching Guyanese our history. You can go through school in Guyana, did West Indian history, European history, and you didn't do Guyanese history. The first time you will come in contact with Guyanese history is when you go to the university, if you are in a faculty that does history. So there's need again for a complete overall. You need to get first people to become patriotic and people to develop values outside of money. One of the problems we have is that under the PPP government, they have made everything money, bribery, corruption. And so there is no sense of honor. We have a stadium, and I sense of partisan purposes. We didn't give it a name. None of the stands have names. Of course, I sense because some of the names that will emerge they don't like. You have to be a government that is committed to your culture. This government is not involved in ensuring that there is the evolution of a Guyanese culture. I remember that joke of Philip, Joe Hamilton. I was saying in the parliament that we need to look at Rokotuks because it is a combination of Kwekwe and Comfort, and therefore it has a indigenous base. I pointed out that there are a number of songs in the indigenous community that if we can culturally promote them, then what will happen is that you have the emergence of culture that we all can accept. Let us not forget that the late Omar Farouk was a pioneer in what was called Indo-Afrobeat. And we never really promoted it. So Chutney came and replaced it. But the reality is Guyana has rooted in Guyana was the Indo-Afrobeat. If we had developed it, would have been not only in from Guyana, but it could have taken on outside of Guyana. When you have an oil and gas sector and people come into Guyana, they want to have cultural things that are Guyanese in nature. This government has no interest in that. We will focus on culture. We will do copyright, etc., so that people's cultural property can translate into earning in a decent way.
You know, as we wrap up and you talk about culture, something that I objected to significantly, and I'm sure you may have an opinion, the fact that we had dance hall music in a competition in our national Mastramani celebrations. What are your thoughts on that kind of direction and thinking?
Because we fail to promote the dance troops that are Guyanese by nature. We fail to promote the Indian dances, the Amerindian dances, the African dances, so that things emerge that are Guyanese in nature. We do not have at our disposal an option. And so with the internet and everything in the world emerging on your phone, a lot of young Guyanese ended up in the direction of dance hall. Now, I believe that a Ministry of Culture has to focus on developing those talents, financing proper dance groups, etc., that can innovate and produce things that are Guyanese. We need a Guyanese cultural reemergence and then the fusion of our cultures to produce something national.
Well, it's coincidental you talk about our culture because beginning at the end, coming this Friday, we'll see the opening of the Car Festa, the 15th Car Festa in Barbados. hopefully we'll have good representation. I know we've had great representations in times gone by. Had the privilege of attending 4 Carifestas, and we did exceedingly well. Hopefully, we'll see what will happen this one. Mr. Norton, we've come to the end of our chat this morning, but as usual, it's an opportunity to appeal to the voters based on all that you've discussed this morning. So I'll give you the privilege of closing off and making a closing statement to voters.
I would say to the Guyanese voters, don't be carried away by fluff. Read our manifesto, and you will see a program that you can buy into that will impact the lives of all Guyanese. I want to say to the Guyanese public, if you look at the team of persons we would have put together, you will see a wide variety of professions. You will see all ethnic groups. You will see youth. You will see women. And so we're saying to you that as a political party, we offer you the best option. In fact, we offer you the option of electing the first female indigenous prime minister in this country. And I believe that is important. So my thing to you I will say is this: vote for the best. And the best right now is the APNU.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time. It's been a pleasure. We enjoyed, I'm sure listeners as well, enjoyed every moment of it. And for the benefit of those who may have missed Mr. Norton's discussions here this morning, it will be rebroadcast tonight at 7 o'clock right here on 104.1 Lite FM.
Bobby, there's one thing I left out that
Go
I
right
should
ahead.
have said. I should have said to you that we promised the Guyanese people to return honesty to government, and I think they should vote for that.
There you go. I should say amen. Lite FM, Mr. Aubrey Norton. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And all the best in your endeavors with the elections.